Voting right now on whether or not to hold Steve Bannon in criminal contempt. And of course, once that vote is in, and it will be over 218 votes to do this, to actually hold him in contempt, nothing will happen, I don't think. Yesterday, Mary Clark from the Associated Press actually asked Jamie Raskin whether or not he would use the power of inherent contempt to get the sergeant at arms to go find Steve Bannon and bring him to jail pending his cooperation with the subpoena. And here's what he said.
Are you guys going to jail someone if they don't, the inherent? I mean, it's talked about a lot. It was talked about during impeachment.
We don't have punitive intentions here. We're not out to jail people or fine people or whatever. We're out to get to the truth of what happened. People cannot obstruct justice in this way. People cannot violate subpoenas of the U.S. Congress. And again, we'll use the sanctions that are at our disposal, not in a vindictive way, not in a punitive way, but in order to see that the rule of law is vindicated. But really what the investigation is about is, how was this planned? How was it organized? How was it funded? How were the different elements coordinated? And what was the synchronization between the political coup that was targeting Vice President Pence, hang Mike Pence, to try to force him to return electoral college votes to the states? How was that synchronized with the violence that was unleashed against us on that day? We're trying to reconstruct this whole pattern of events, and we would hope that every American would be on our side in trying to figure this out.
Did that answer her question, which she gigglingly asked him? I mean, she was literally giggling like a schoolgirl. And so they talked about inherent. Are you going to jail somebody for violating a subpoena? Are you gonna... What is so funny about that? Either Steve Bannon is above the law or Steve Bannon is not above the law. There is nothing beneath him. As you know, he has violated the law with regard to his own viewers, his own listeners, his own supporters, bilked them out of millions of dollars with the fraud that was called We Build the Wall. Needed a pardon from the president and freaking got one. What is so funny about that, Mary? What is so funny about actually insisting that people comply with subpoenas in this here country, a nation of laws, not men? Why is that funny to you? I couldn't understand why it was funny to her. Of course, I'm the only one that saw that, but okay. Jason in Simi Valley.
Good day, ma'am.
Good
I
day.
just have a question, because you've been talking about inherent contempt, right?
Yes.
I think there are some problems here that it's not as simple as it. Well, not that anything is simple, but here's the point. The Congress does what you say. Send the sergeant at arms out to get the guy, right? Here's your problem. 80 years, because it has usually been dealt with the Justice Department and such. What happens if the sergeant at arms goes off property, off the Capitol grounds, goes out to Maryland or wherever to grab Stephen Bannon, right?
Right.
Here's your problem. I mean, that state has its own law. That means it's an extradition to start with, because you've got to extradite him to the Congress. You can't just drag him over there.
We don't follow state law in the U.S. House of Representatives. We follow federal law in the U.S. House of Representatives.
That is right.
So it's
Here's your problem.
So you don't have to extradite from state to state. It's federal law, and federal law is supreme.
Yeah, well, and what I'm trying to say is here, what this is 80 years later is that it went from going out and doing that, which I'd like to know, did they actually 80 years ago go out and grab somebody and throw them into a cell, which apparently is no longer exists?
Yes.
In the Congress?
Mm-hmm, they did.
Here's your problem. You go do that today, and those guys go marching up to him. That guy's going to get a lawyer. And what if state cops say, "Hey, wait a minute, you got to extradite here. You do not have
jurisdiction." They do have jurisdiction. It's federal. It isn't state.
Yeah, but it's going to get challenged right on the spot before they can lay their hands on him. I'm not saying I want him thrown in too. By the way, I want him thrown in.
I understand. You don't get to challenge your arrest at the site of your arrest.
Yeah, but the problem is taking somebody into custody.
There is no problem. You can take somebody into custody. You can. It happens.
And we've done this 80 years ago, right? It
happens every day in this country, and people don't get to say when the feds come for you, okay, or or if this is a state matter and the court court comes for you, people don't get to challenge their
the problem
arrest
is the sergeant at
on
arms
the spot. That doesn't happen in this country. You have to wait to be arraigned, right? And then when you're arraigned, you will be told what you're charged with, and then you can plead, okay? And that's how that goes. You don't get to challenge your arrest on the spot.
I'm sorry. I've got to make this point here, and please, I love you. I'm not trying to be I'm saying right now, the process that was done 80 years ago, our legal system is radically different today. And if they were to go out there and do this, I guarantee you that the only way this would work is if the Congress and the Sergeant goes to the FBI, the Justice Department, to get U.S. Marshals to go get it. Okay?
So let me ask
saying?
you a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Why does one branch of government need to go to another branch of government to enforce its own subpoena, in your mind? Why?
Because
why
that is the way the system, right,
that
wrong, or
is
in
not
between.
the way the system works. Inherent contempt gives Congress the authority to enforce.
They may have the authority to do it, and I'm not saying they don't.
But aren't we talking about what is authorized under our law here?
But the problem is there is a long space between what they can do and what is practical in this world. I guarantee you, if they tried to give this guy...
Why is there any space between what they're authorized to do to enforce their subpoenas and what really happens? Why is there a space?
Because this is the way the system has
This is not
evolved.
the way. It didn't
evolve.
How did it evolve? What happened in law that changed it?
Because
Nothing.
they haven't done this for 80 years.
So what? That just because it's dormant doesn't mean it's something
Yeah, the
that
problem
got
is when
changed.
something is dormant, Randy, what I'm trying to say is, if you go ahead and do this could create a huge mess, because if a state can just assert a right,
it isn't
wrong.
a state. This is a federal
I understand that, but
act of Congress.
Yeah, but you're still going to have to go to the Justice Department. You're still going to have to go get the...
Why does one branch have to rely on another branch in order to enforce its own law?
Because that is the way it evolved.
Okay, you're going to have to cite your source for that.
No. What I'm trying to say is practicality here. Okay.
Okay. Well, that's
Please,
a whole.
I'm not trying.
So practicality has
is,
nothing to
does
do
the Sergeant
with
at Arms
the law.
have jurisdiction off federal ground?
Yes.
Maybe yes, maybe no.
What do you mean?
That's
maybe
a question.
yes, maybe no. That's not a question.
All right. But here's your point. The problem is, I'm sorry, the judicial system in our country has changed. I believe in inherent contempt. I want the guy dragged in chains before them.
Tell me when inherent contempt was changed.
Inherent contempt was changed because of inactivity, because it became dormant, because in a way it's almost passed into history.
I'm so sorry, but that doesn't change the law. If you had a Voting Rights Act that wasn't gutted by the Supreme Court, you'd still have a Voting Rights Act, even though it was passed way back in 1965. It would still be the law unless it was gutted, okay? Unless somebody went to change the law and the Supreme Court upheld that change.
Okay.
So that did not happen as far as I know.
Yeah, you know what, Randy? Here's practicality and what goes on today.
So
and I have a question.
Okay, all right. You're mixing two things. You're mixing what is written in the law and practicality. The law is not practical. You know, it's not. And here's how we know. It could take you 10 years to even question somebody who wronged you in court. It took, 6 years for Donald Trump to even answer a question about the protesters in front of Trump Tower that were roughed up by his security detail in 2015. I believe he just sat for that deposition this week. So 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 6 years. 6 years. That's not practical, but that's the law. Don't confuse practicality with the law. The Constitution was written a really stinking long time ago. And guess what? You still have freedom of speech. Guess what? You still have freedom of assembly in some places. You know, we did have an attempt here in Florida to get rid of freedom of assembly with something called the Riot Act. He was going to read us the Riot Act death sentence was. But it got struck down by the court because that old Constitution, that old idea, that old piece of paper actually, while it's not practical, it still exists in law. It's still how we self-govern. Now, when you don't agree that the Constitution is germane anymore, or that it applies anymore, or that it's not practical anymore, then we're not a nation of laws anymore. We're now a nation of men. And the men seem to be Steve Bannon. Sorry, I'm not going there. Don't have time to listen to the live show? Want to hear more on your schedule? Go to randyrhodes.com and buy a stinking podcast.